My name is Rachel Cooper, and this is the story of how my life unraveled in the most ordinary place, a grocery store checkout line. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I had nothing on my mind except frozen lasagna, almond milk, and a roll of paper towels. Just another errand, another forgettable moment. But life has a way of disguising its sharpest knives as routine. As I placed my items on the conveyor belt, my phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit up the screen, my fiancé, the man I thought I would marry in 2 months. My chest warmed for a second, expecting something sweet, maybe a reminder to grab his favorite salsa, maybe a joke about rehearsal dinner plans. Instead, my world shattered in one line. Wedding's off, expect a call from my lawyer. That was it. No explanation, no emotion, just the cold finality of a period at the end of my future. I nearly dropped the phone. The cashier had to tell me twice that it was my turn. I paid without a word, walked to my car, and sat frozen in the driver's seat for 15 minutes. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even ask why. The only message I sent back was, "As you wish." Because deep down, part of me had seen this coming. Not this way, not this cruel, but in the subtle signs I had been too desperate to ignore the empty glances, the scheduled intimacy, the distance that grew like a shadow. He had been pulling away for months, and I had been clinging harder, patching holes in a ship that was already sinking. But what he didn't know was that this ending wouldn't break me. It would awaken something far stronger. When I got home, I sat on my tiny apartment couch, still in my heels, still in disbelief. 2 weeks before that text, Ethan and I had signed paperwork for a townhouse just outside Seattle. 3 bedrooms, a patio garden, French doors that let the light pour in. He had fallen in love with the hardwood floors. I had been cautious, insisting we wait until the ink was dry. Thank God for that instinct. Because as I stared at my laptop that night, clarity washed over me. 3 clicks, that's all it took. I withdrew my name from the mortgage application. In seconds, the dream house was no longer ours. It was no longer his. The screen blinked back at me. Application withdrawn. Status canceled. Months of planning dissolved like sugar in water. Ethan thought he could end our engagement with a lawyer's letter and keep the house as some prize of victory. But he forgot one thing: we weren't married yet. Legally, I owed him nothing. That house was still just paper, and now that paper had turned to ash in his hands. I closed the laptop and felt a silence settle over me. Not the silence of shock, but the silence of power. No shouting, no begging, no bargaining, just the soft rhythm of my heartbeat reminding me I was still here. By the next evening, the consequences landed. Calls from strange numbers, voicemails stacking up, emails marked urgent from his lawyer demanding I reinstate the mortgage. The tone shifted quickly from stern to pleading. 2 days earlier, Ethan had cut me off like a business transaction. Now his side was unraveling in panic. I didn't respond, I let them sweat. Then came a call from Lily, a mutual friend. Her voice carried hesitation, as though she had been dragged into a storm she never asked for. "Rachel, is it true? Did you really pull out of the house?" "Yes," I answered calmly. She exhaled sharply. "Ethan's freaking out. He told his parents they'd have a guest room for Thanksgiving. He already ordered furniture." I almost said not my problem, but instead let the silence linger. Lily lowered her voice. "He says you're doing this to punish him, that you're being vindictive." I nearly laughed. "No," I whispered, "I'm just done playing dumb." Because this wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about punishing Ethan, it was about waking up. And when you stop reacting, when you step back and refuse to play the role someone has written for you, people reveal who they really are. That's exactly what began to happen. Within days, Ethan's cousin Blake reached out with a short message. "Sorry about everything. You dodged a bullet. Ask him about Spencer." Spencer. A name like a flare in the night. At first it didn't register, but when I started scrolling through tagged photos on Instagram, his friends hadn't locked down their accounts. I saw her, tall blonde, her arm looped casually around Ethan's waist, at an engagement party the very weekend he told me he was sick. His face turned toward hers, intimate, familiar. My chest didn't break this time. It cleared. Every sign, every cold glance, every hollow kiss clicked into place. This wasn't confusion. This was calculation. He hadn't ended things because he was lost. He ended things because he was already gone. And he thought I would fall apart so he could walk away clean. But Ethan underestimated me. This time I wasn't going to fall. I remember staring at those photos of Ethan and Spencer as if my entire life had been reframed in one cruel instant. I thought back to every lie he had told, late nights at the office, sudden weekend trips, the way he'd silenced his phone when he came home. It was all right there, evidence of betrayal hiding in plain sight, and I had been too eager for a future to see it. The worst part wasn't even the infidelity. It was the way he discarded me like a used napkin, too cowardly to speak, too arrogant to believe I would fight back. That text wasn't just a breakup, it was a declaration of war. But what Ethan didn't know was that he hadn't left me empty-handed. Over the course of our relationship, I had quietly kept a record. Every expense I covered when he was short on cash, every loan I gave that was never repaid, every receipt that bore my name while he played house with my money. My folders were meticulous because I had learned long ago that love doesn't protect you, paperwork does. The next morning, I walked into my attorney's office. Daniel, a calm man with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, listened quietly as I laid out the situation. I slid a folder across his desk, thick with documents, bank statements, screenshots of text messages. He flipped through the pages slowly, then looked up at me. "Rachel, you've been sitting on a gold mine of evidence. Do you realize what this means?" I shook my head. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with adrenaline. "It means," he continued, "if Ethan tries to come after you legally, if he dares to claim damages over the house or anything else, you have enough to countersue him into the ground. You covered his debts, his expenses. You practically financed his lifestyle. He has no case. In fact, you do." The words landed like a bomb. For the first time since that text, I felt a surge of control. "Then we fight," I whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we fight." That evening, Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced. I knew it was him before I even opened the door. His knock was sharp, impatient, the sound of a man who had always expected obedience. When I finally pulled the door open, he stood there, jaw clenched, wearing the suit I had bought him for a promotion celebration 2 years earlier. "Rachel," he snapped, not even a greeting. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You pulled out of the house. You're ruining everything." I stayed calm, leaning against the frame. "You ruined everything the moment you texted me instead of speaking to me like a man." His eyes flickered, but he pressed on. "You're being dramatic. I was angry. We can work this out. But the house, you need to fix that. My lawyer—" "Your lawyer won't save you." I cut in, my voice sharp. "I've kept records, Ethan. Every penny I spent on you. Every loan you never repaid. You think you can walk away with a house while leaving me with nothing? Think again. If you want to play legal games, I'll bury you in them." For the first time, he faltered. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He wasn't used to this version of me, the woman who didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't fold. "You're bluffing," he spat finally. I smiled. "Am I? Then go ahead. Take me to court. Let's see what happens when Spencer's name comes up in discovery." The color drained from his face at the mention of her name. So I was right. Spencer wasn't just a fling. She was part of the secret life he thought he could keep hidden. "You wouldn't," he said, his voice quieter now. "I would," I replied coldly, "and you know it." He left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hall. When the door shut, I sank into the couch, my heart pounding. I had stood my ground, but the war wasn't over. The days that followed were tense. Emails from his lawyer arrived, each one more desperate than the last. First came threats, claims of damages, of emotional distress, of broken agreements. Then came offers splitting costs, compromise. Finally came silence. And then, out of nowhere, a package arrived at my door. No return address, just a manila envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a note written in a hand I didn't recognize. "You deserve to know the truth." I plugged the drive into my laptop with shaking hands. Folders opened, photos, videos, scanned documents. And as the files loaded, my stomach dropped. There he was, Ethan with Spencer. Not just in stolen moments, but in expensive hotels, at dinners, on trips I had once been told were business conferences. But worse than that were the documents, financial statements, contracts, evidence that Ethan had been siphoning money from our shared accounts to cover his life with her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. Every file was a blade cutting through the last illusions I had left. And then I noticed a final folder labeled simply "Read Me." Inside was a PDF and email chain between Ethan and Spencer. My hands shook as I read. Once she's out of the picture, Spencer had written, "The house is ours. Her credit, her money, it all gets us through closing. After that, she can cry to her friends. We'll be untouchable." Ethan's reply was short, smug, cruel. Exactly. She'll never see it coming. My breath hitched. They had planned it together. Every smile, every kiss, every promise had been a con. And I had been the fool financing their fantasy. But not anymore. Because now I had proof, and with proof comes power. I barely slept that night. The glow of my laptop screen lingered in my vision long after I shut it down. The words from that email seared into my memory like fire. Once she's out of the picture, the house is ours. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, torn between disbelief and rage, my body vibrating with a kind of energy I'd never known. It wasn't despair anymore, it was resolve. By morning, my course was clear. I called Daniel, my attorney, and told him about the envelope and the USB drive. He didn't ask how it arrived, didn't question its source. He only said, "Bring it in, today." When I placed the drive on his desk, he handled it with the care of a surgeon holding a scalpel. He opened the files, scrolling through photos, contracts, and finally the email chain. His expression hardened. "This is gold," he said flatly. "If Ethan tries to come after you, this isn't just a defense, it's an offense. We're not just proving you're clean, we're proving he's dirty, and that changes everything." A part of me wanted to cry with relief, but another part still burned with betrayal. They were using me, Daniel, the whole time. I thought I was building a life with him, but he was just building a scheme. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Rachel, you have to understand men like Ethan. They don't think in terms of love or loyalty. They think in assets. To him, you weren't a partner. You were collateral." Collateral. The word lodged in my chest like a shard of glass. That evening, I walked by the waterfront, the cool wind brushing against my cheeks. I thought of the girl I had been when I met Ethan, hopeful, naive, dazzled by his charm. He had promised me forever, but behind that promise was a ledger. And when the numbers didn't add up, he erased me. But what he didn't expect was that I would rise from the erasure stronger than before. The next confrontation came sooner than I expected. Ethan showed up again, this time in the lobby of my office building. He looked different, hollow, desperate, the arrogance stripped away. "Rachel," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "Can we talk?" I didn't want a scene, so I agreed to step outside. We stood by the glass doors, city traffic rushing past us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said I made a mistake. I almost laughed. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning toast. What you did was calculated." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "Look, Spencer and I, it wasn't supposed to be serious. But things got complicated. The house—" "Stop!" I cut in sharply. "I saw the emails, Ethan. I know the plan. I know everything. And if you think for 1 second I'll let you play victim, now you're worse than I thought." His face paled. "Emails." "Yes," I said coldly. "Every photo, every transaction, every lie, delivered straight to me. You thought you were untouchable, but you forgot one thing: paper trails don't lie." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not guilt, not shame, fear. "What do you want?" he whispered. I met his gaze steadily. "Nothing. That's the part you don't get. I don't want revenge. I don't want the house. I don't even want your apology. I want freedom. And thanks to you, I have it. You've given me every reason to walk away without a shred of regret." His lips parted, but no words came. He looked at me as though I had transformed into someone he couldn't recognize. And maybe I had. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said simply and turned back toward the building. That night, Daniel called me again. "Rachel, I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly. If you want to press charges, fraud, embezzlement, you could. You'd win." The idea tempted me. To see him dragged into court, to watch his smirk wiped away under fluorescent lights, to let the world see the man behind the mask. But as I sat with the thought, something shifted in me. I realized I didn't need a courtroom victory to reclaim my power. I already had it. The proof was mine, the choice was mine. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to Ethan's moves, I was choosing my own. So I told Daniel, keep it on file. But for now, I don't want a trial. I want closure. Silence on the line, then a slow nod I could almost hear. Closure, he repeated. When I hung up, I looked around my apartment. It wasn't a townhouse with French doors, but it was mine. Every wall, every chair, every corner built on my terms. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt at home. But I knew one thing: Ethan wasn't finished. Men like him rarely accept defeat gracefully, and when he made his next move, I would be ready. I was right. Ethan didn't fade quietly into the background. Men like him never do. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived by certified mail, his lawyer's attempt at one last strike. Inside were threats dressed up as legal jargon, claims of financial loss, accusations of bad faith, even a suggestion that I had sabotaged the mortgage process out of spite. For a moment, I felt the old fear creeping back, the fear of being cornered, of being powerless. But then I opened my laptop, clicked on the folder holding the USB drive's contents, and smiled. Their words meant nothing compared to the proof I held in my hands. I forwarded everything to Daniel with a single message: time to end this. 3 days later, Ethan's lawyer withdrew. Completely. No calls, no emails, no follow-up. Whatever conversation Daniel had with them, it must have been brutal because the silence that followed was absolute. And just like that, the war was over. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would celebrate. But instead, what I felt was something quieter, deeper, a sense of release. Like carrying a stone for so long that when it's finally gone, you don't dance. You just breathe. Still, closure has a way of arriving in unexpected forms. For me, it came one Saturday morning when I ran into Lily at a coffee shop downtown. She spotted me before I could slip away and rushed over, eyes wide. "Rachel," she whispered urgently, leaning close. "Have you heard Spencer left him? She took what was left of his savings and moved out. He's a wreck." I blinked. For a second, I felt a flicker of vindication. But it faded quickly, replaced by something else: pity maybe, or just exhaustion. "He'll survive," I said simply. "He always does." She studied me, her brow furrowed. "You don't even care, do you?" I looked out the window, the morning sun spilling across the street. "I cared for too long," I replied softly. "Now I care about me." That afternoon, I went home and opened my journal, something I hadn't touched in years. Page after page, I poured it all out: the betrayal, the anger, the grief, the relief. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the words blurred with tears. And when I finally set the pen down, I felt lighter. Not healed entirely, those scars would always remain, but lighter. Ethan had wanted to define me as collateral, as a pawn in his game. But I had rewritten the story. I was no one's pawn. I was the author of my own life. Weeks turned into months. The townhouse went back on the market. Ethan faded from my circle entirely. Occasionally, whispers of his downfall reached me through mutual friends, job troubles, family arguments, debts piling up. Each time I listened quietly, then let the whispers pass. His downfall wasn't my victory to savor. My victory was already won: freedom. One evening, I found myself walking by the water again. The city lights shimmered on the waves, and I thought about the girl I had been when this all began, the woman in the grocery store checkout line holding frozen lasagna and a phone that carried the death of her future. She had been broken, stunned, lost. But she hadn't stayed that way. I whispered into the night, as though speaking to her: "You survived. You did more than survive. You took back your life." And for the first time, I believed it fully. To anyone listening to my story now, maybe you felt what I felt: betrayal that gutted you, a loss that stole your breath. Maybe someone you trusted turned your love into leverage. If that's you, hear me: you are not defined by what they did. You are not the ashes they left behind. You are the fire that rises from them. That's the lesson I carry forward. Love should never cost you your dignity. Trust should never demand your silence. And when someone shows you their betrayal, don't spend your life holding the shards. Use them to build something stronger. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it gave you strength, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories of resilience. And leave me a comment. I want to hear your story too. Together we can make sure betrayal never has the last word.